All right. It's 6 p.m., so I will now call this August 13th, 2024 regular meeting of the Wenatchee School District School Board to order. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Esta junta se lleva a cabo en inglés, pero contamos con servicio de traducción si alguien gusta hacer un comentario público o recibir explicaciones en español, por favor indique su necesidad. We'll start with the agenda. Are there any changes or modifications to the agenda? Nope. Moving on, then first up, we have a special budget presentation hearing. So I have a few comments for this. Welcome and good evening. Thank you for joining us for the August 13th special budget hearing. The district has completed the 2024-25 budget and four-year projection and published a notice of this budget hearing in accordance with RCW 28A 505050. The budget is on file at the district administration office and a copy is available to anyone requesting one. It is also available online on the district website. The Board of Directors has set August 27th, 2024 as the date for adopting the 2024-25 budget. Any person may appear at this public hearing to be heard in favor of or against any part of the budget. Sean Fitzgerald, the Executive Director of Business and Finance, will provide a brief overview of the 24-25 budget. Then the budget hearing will be open for public comment. Public comments on other topics will be accepted during the regular meeting following the special budget hearing.
Just wait a minute for the presentation to come up here. Yeah. Looking good, right? Got to get it right, you know. All right. Well, thank you and good evening, President Norton, members of the board, and Superintendent Callahar. I'm here to check the angles again. Yes. All right. Well, thank you and good evening, President Norton, members of the board, and Superintendent Callahar. I'm here tonight to present on the third and final presentation on the 2024-25 budget. Two previous presentations were presented to the board in June. The numbers presented tonight have been reviewed by the North Central ESD, and much of what you'll see tonight will be similar from the June board meetings. Pending any feedback from tonight's meeting, this budget will be adopted by the board at the August 27th board meeting. There we go. To begin, as always, the district fund structure. The school district operates on a fund basis, and a fund is funds are self-balancing set of accounts used for the purpose of carrying on specific activities or attaining certain objectives. The district uses 5 funds, which is our general fund, capital projects, associated student body or ASB, our debt service fund, and our transportation vehicle fund. The general fund is the district's largest fund and makes up over 90% of the entire budget and covers the day-to-day operations of the district. Moving on to enrollment. So we have here, this chart is a 9-year trend of birth rates occurring in Chelan County and the Wenatchee School District areas. We use birth rates to project our incoming kindergarten classes, and we start with the kindergartner's birth year and add 5 years when we determine that's usually the average age of our kindergarten students. So for example, our student born in 2019 would be projected to be enrolled in the school district for the 2024-25 school year. We can see the district birth rate peaked in 2014, and the county birth rates peaked in 2015. On our next slide, we'll see that the district enrollment peaked in the 15-16 school year. Generally, there is a correlation between birth rates and kindergarten classes, and as such, we would expect that since birth rates increased from 2018 to 2019 on the chart here, that we will see larger incoming classes for 2024-25 school year than the current school year. This still may be the case, but our incoming numbers show it lower than anticipated, and as such, we are budgeting conservatively for our kindergarten enrollment. Here is the district's enrollment from the 2013-14 school year up until the present to June of 2024. We see enrollment peaked in 2015-16 school year. Before losing, we see an overall decline of 900 FTE from that school year up until the present day. As of June of 2024, we are currently at 6,740 FTE, excluding Running Start and Open Doors enrollment. Once we have our final summer school numbers, we anticipate our final FTE for this year to be around 6,755. So by our final numbers, by the end of the month, we do anticipate to see about an increase of about 15 FTE to finish up the year. Here's our budget enrollment as of June 24, as with the 24-25 budget and the 4-year forecast. Based on our projections, we're looking at for 2024-25, a decline of 225 student FTE for the school year. And there are a number of factors that I'll kind of walk through here that we can see. So beginning with transition to kindergarten at the beginning, we're seeing an increase at this level due to the expansion of our transitional kindergarten program from 3 classrooms to 4. And we anticipate that program to grow. Classes average between 12 and 15. And so our actual numbers, our registration numbers are reflecting that growth. As mentioned before with our kindergarten classes, we're budgeting conservatively despite the increase in birth rates for the 24-25 school year. So they're kind of similar to what we experienced this year, just to be on the conservative. And then if we follow that trend moving over the next 4 years, we see a continuing decline in our kindergarten classes, and that is due to the decline in the birth rates we're seeing at both the county level and the birth projections we're seeing in the Wenatchee School District area. And so just using that general correlation and that trend, we're kind of following suit there. Another thing we're seeing is just graduating classes are larger than our incoming classes. So we can see here for the 23-24 school year, 12th graders at 556, and our kindergarten classes at 435. So again, a wide discrepancy there. And then we can also see too, just with our current 11th grade class, which will be our 12th grade class, you see already about 100 FTE difference between those classes, our current 11th graders and our current 12th graders. So if the trends follow suit, again, our incoming senior class would be about 100 FTE shorter. We're also seeing a number of analyzing our classes that are above 500 FTE. So for 23-24 school year, we're seeing about 7 grade levels that are 500 or more. We expect that to decline to about 5 grade levels for next year. And if that trend continues, we would only be above 500 FTE for our grade levels we would only have 2 in the 27-28 school year. So again, that projects, based on those trends, we see why there's declining enrollment. Other big areas we're seeing, transition from elementary to middle school level, the impact of the charter school in the area, just from the 5th to the 6th grade, we do see a decline of FTE, and we do anticipate that trend to continue, and we built that in for these projections. And then at the 10th and the 11th grade, we're also seeing the impact of Running Start. Right now, we were seeing very high enrollment or registration numbers for Running Start for the 24-25 school year, and that affects our high school enrollment. So again, we're anticipating an increase in the Running and Start enrollment, but then that would be a corresponding decline in our high school or high school levels. Again, just to reiterate, kind of our analysis overall projection is that enrollment will continue to decline, as we've discussed earlier with transition to kindergarten, elementary, but moving down past the high schools, we have our ALE. We are seeing increasing demand for our alternative learning education. Right now, our Valley is at our max enrollment. And so we're seeing increasing demand there, which would increase funding for the school district. We're also seeing increased enrollment at special education. But however, we do receive state funding up to a point, so we closely monitor those enrollment levels. And then also we're going to see in the fall the impact of the private schools. We have a private school opening and then some expansions. Currently, we don't know what those actual enrollment numbers would be if students are withdrawing from Wenatchee School District and enrolling in these private schools. And we probably won't have this information until the fall to see the actual impact. And then last, funding. Again, we're funded on our budgeted amount from September through December. And then once January rolls around, actual enrollment numbers will be used by OSPI for funding the district. Before I move on from enrollment, is there any questions? All right. Moving on to Transportation Vehicle Fund. So again, the purpose of the Transportation Vehicle Fund is for the purchase and repair of school yellow buses only. We primarily receive our revenue from the state reimbursement for depreciation, but we can also receive funding from our investment interest income from the local government investment pool, transportation levies, non-voted debt, or transfers from the general fund or other ways to fund it. Our primary and our revenue sources come from the depreciation reimbursement and the investment interest income. Again, expenditures are recorded when buses are delivered, not when they are ordered. And for the 24-25 budget, it makes up about 1% of the overall expenditures. And then last, funds are legally restricted. So in other words, they can only be used for the Transportation Vehicle Fund. They cannot be used for the general fund or anything other purpose of the school district. So just assumptions and methodology behind building the budget for 24-25. We ordered 5 buses in the 23-24 school year, which are expected to arrive during the 24-25 school year, which they will then be recorded. We ordered 3 Type D buses for general education, which are expected to arrive in September. And then we had ordered an additional 2 Type A buses, which are smaller buses for special education. And they are determined to arrive sometime in the spring of 2025. The ultimate goal is to replace our aging and fully depreciated vehicles and expand fleet. This also kind of begs the question, it's like, if we're having overall enrollment decline, why are we expanding our bus fleet? And so there are several reasons why we're doing this. So the first is our special education. Even though overall enrollment's declining, our special education enrollment is still increasing. So we need to ensure we're providing adequate transportation for those students. Lincoln Elementary, we were adding 2 new bus routes to handle the larger student population there. A few years ago, we discontinued our use of charter buses, which were quite expensive, and it has realized an overall cost savings for the district as a whole. But as a result, we would need to expand our own fleet for athletic purposes. And then just fleet capacity. It's always good to have an extra bus or 2 on hand to be available for district needs, whether it's athletics, emergencies, bus maintenance, those things happen. So having those available is nice to have. And then last, we have our fund balance. We have available fund reserves for this purpose, and they can only be used for this purpose. So while we have these resources, we're going to maximize what we can do for the Transportation Vehicle Fund. And with that, we have our breakdown for next year and the 4-year forecast. So we can see here just the bus purchases for 24-25, that's 5 buses. And as we can see, we have, although we'll be using our fund balance, we still have adequate reserves. And then as the years progress, we kind of draw down on our bus purchases. So we're kind of projecting 2 to 3 bus purchases for the next 4 years, or the next 3 years, I should say, after that, while utilizing our fund reserves. And that would just be at that point, just replacing the aging fleet. Any questions on transportation vehicle?
Just real quickly for technical purposes, when you're saying reserves, you're just really talking about the fund balance. There's not a special reserve line item like there is for general fund for this.
Correct. So it's the fund balance would be the reserves for the transportation vehicle fund.
My question was, are we able to, I know it's fully depreciated. We're selling these old buses.
Mhm.
Are we able to sell them, or is it more that's going into surplus and then it's not like we're gonna get more money into that in the transportation fund
Well,
from that sale?
We do surplus, all buses are surplus, and whatever revenue we realize from those sales would go back into this fund. Yeah,
It couldn't go in like the general fund or something else, like.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm. Moving on, associated student body. So the ASB fund is designated for activities or events which are cultural, social, recreational, or of athletic nature. The fund is financed from establishing and collecting fees, fines, and donations. Like the transportation vehicle fund, these funds are legally restricted, so therefore they can only be used for ASB purposes only. And it makes up about 1% of the 24-25 budget. Looking at next year's budget and the 4-year forecast, we can see that the ASB is continuing its trend to return to pre-pandemic activity, and the budget reflects that. Forecasts stay consistent year to year because every year new students come in and work on the budget. Each school ASB operates independently and prepares their own budget, which is then reviewed for reasonableness at the finance end, but ultimately it is a collaboration amongst the schools and the ASB and the students to develop their budget. Overall, we're just seeing, again, healthy activity, and we anticipate this to either stay consistent or grow depending on the school activities and athletics. Any questions on ASB? Moving on to debt service. So the purpose of the debt service fund is pay the principal and interest on our bonds or our long-term debt. And we make payments every June on the interest and principal and interest in December. We currently have one outstanding bond, which was refinanced in March of 2024, saving taxpayers $6.6 million over the remainder of the bond term. The district will fully pay off this bond in December of 2033, and it makes up about 5% of our 24-25 budget. And then again, funds are legally restricted. So any fund balance, any reserves, any revenues that are collected in this fund, like transportation vehicle and ASB, can only be used for the specific purposes of debt service, which would be paying off long-term debt. So here again, 24-25 budget and our forecast. Our revenues, we work with Piper Sandler to ensure we're collecting a sufficient amount of funding to make our annual debt payments. Our expenditures make up our principal and interest payments, which are determined by the bond schedule. So we have a fixed bond payment, which is currently projected all the way up to 2033. So the numbers here do reflect that payment schedule. And then again, the fund balance, our reserves are legally restricted and can only be used to pay off long-term debt. And then this year we had did a arbitrage audit and to determine, because you can only hold so much money in that fund balance, and there are IRS regulations and calculations behind that. So they want to ensure that you're only holding so much in your fund balance. This was reviewed by an arbitrage specialist, and they found that we're compliant with our fund balance reserves. And so looking like a very healthy fund for next year and the foreseeable future. Capital projects. So the purpose of the capital projects fund is to account for financial resources to be used for the acquisition or construction of major capital facilities. That can be used for purchasing land, construction, making capital improvements, or remodeling. Main revenue sources are bonds, capital projects levies, sale of surplus real property, grants, our investment interest income, and then transfers from the general fund. Our funding sources for capital projects, so we have a number of them. So we have a technology skill center state grant, of about 14.5 million. This can only be used for the purpose of improving or expanding our Wenatchee Valley Technical Skills Center. We also have a transfer from the general fund of $500,000 in case of emergency maintenance or priority needs. This is state apportionment funding only. And if it's not used, then the unused funds will go back into the general fund. We also have a clean energy audit from the Chelan County PUD of $150,000. That will be used for, again, our clean energy audit purposes. Then we have investment interest earnings. Likely, we're probably about $100,000. If we do reach this amount, this can be used for any use in the capital projects. We also have a state CTE grant for $63,000. And then we just have some local rental income of $2,500. So if we look at the budget and the forecast here, we do see the breakdown of where those revenue sources are going for 24, 25 and beyond. Again, as presented in June, we're showing the full allocation of the 14.5 million. Whether this will be the actual plan or layout of the skills center, we will see as things develop. That's a major project with a lot of funding. That's going to take multiple years, but it's here to demonstrate that those resources would be fully allocated and how that would look. And then on the expenditure side, again, these would be going to skills center or maintenance purposes. Equipment purchases would be the state CTE grant, and again, the energy would be to the energy audit. Again, the fund balance, we would be exhausting the fund balance based on these projections. Whether that comes to pass or not, we don't know yet, but it's there to, again, to show that assuming funding is fully allocated for specific purposes, whether it's the skill center or emergency maintenance or being compliant with the other grants. Any questions on capital projects?
Yeah, I'd like to confirm my understanding that beginning with the skills center, I can see you've got the 14.5 million spread over 4 years. And I'm assuming that your allocation between sites and buildings is at this stage fairly arbitrary, just to sort this sum out. Okay. And then in terms of the expenditure on other items, those would mostly be sort of at this moment unforeseen contingency repair to our aging infrastructure.
Correct.
And you've structured a budget basically that they're uncertain. The budget shows that we will spend every penny we've got.
Correct.
That we want allocated and can move around.
Correct.
Yeah. No, that's fine. I just want to confirm that because I think that's important.
Mm-hmm.
Does this include the HVAC work we've already been doing this summer?
The HVAC work would fall, if it was completed by this summer, it would fall under the 23-24 budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then rental income, I'm assuming that's like gym rental and field rental and that kind of stuff, or?
No, this is local property rental we have
okay.
yeah. So we receive just a flat $2,500 a year that goes into capital projects.
Got it. If we are renting the gyms, is that funding going here or is that general fund?
General fund.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Moving on to the general fund. So the general fund is used to account for all financial resources except those in the other funds. It is used for the current, ordinary, normal, and recurring day-to-day operations of the school district and makes up about 91% of the 24-25 budget. Budget, just assumptions and methodology that went into building the budget, and we'll go into more detail, all of these bullet points with the numbers in the next slide. But again, continued enrollment decline is projected. That has been built in. This also assumes a replacement EP&O levy will pass for the 24-25 school year. Although there's going to be a number of factors, including the levy rate, and then enrollment lid limitations, which may put a cap on collection rate. Inflationary factors, we're using a 3.7% IPD. Even though IPD changes from year to year, and we don't know what the final IPD will be until the conclusion of the state legislative session in April. This is the current IPD rate that has been approved by the state and is being used for budget projections. We're also looking at a 30% annual increase for insurance. Again, Schools Insurance Association of Washington provided us with a letter to our expectation is a 20 to 30% increase. So we have budgeted conservatively. I do believe we should be able to get our final numbers for next year by the end of this week, but we'll see what that holds and what the final number will be. It also depends on fund balance reserves. So again, what we have at the starting of beginning of next year. We're not going to know that until we close out year end, and that won't be finalized until the end of October. And basically, depending on where we land in our reserves, if we have more than it's projected, that's great. But again, we just kind of monitor it, but we won't have a final number until the end of October. We also have to assume there's no significant state legislative funding efforts. The state legislature will be in a long session between January and end of April of next year. But we can't rely, we don't know what they're going to do. If there's just with school districts struggling financially across the state and nationwide, but specifically statewide, we don't know what actions Olympia is going to take. And so we can't assume that there's going to be some sort of increase in funding. We just have to wait until what happens during the legislative session. We're also assuming some sort of budget reductions are taken every year. We also budget for 100% staffing. So we do have certain variances between what's budgeted and actual on our staffing levels, depending if there's unfilled positions throughout the school year. Generally, if we do have unfilled positions, that would result in cost savings. But at this time, we just don't know. School hasn't started yet, and that's something that takes place across the school year. Again, we're looking at our K-3 class size compliance, ensuring we're maintaining that and getting additional funding there. And then we have about $6.3 million in budget capacity for carryover and unexpected revenues and expenditures that arise during the school year. That has also been built in there. And then again, as actual numbers and more information comes along, especially when we get actual enrollment numbers and more solidified on our fund balance in the fall, we adjust our actuals and our projections from what we have today. So revenues by source. So for 24-25, we're looking at total revenues of 129.1 million. And we can see the breakdown here in a number of areas. So our largest, if we're looking at our breakdown, so state general purpose, which is about 70.3 million, makes up over half of our revenue sources. So this is what we're receiving from the state, generally from our apportionment payouts. So this is for basic education, alternative learning, essentially everything that's enrollment driven. So our largest funding source from the state is driven by enrollment. And as you can see how big a factor that is. So again, making up over half of our budgeted revenue sources. State special purpose, that's special education. We also have, so state special purpose would be special education, our learning assistance programs, highly capable and bilingual, again, driven by enrollment, but for specific purposes that we've received from the state. Our federal special purpose would be our federal grants. Local taxes, that is essentially our EP&O levy, and that makes up 10% of our revenue. So a substantial, even though it looks like a small number, that's still a substantial number for funding district operations. Appropriations or expenditures for 24-25 are coming out to about 133.7. So again, our largest area of anticipated expenditures is regular instruction. So that makes up basic education, alternative learning, and our dropout re-engagement. So we can see at 58.2, that makes up almost 44% of our budgeted activities. Support services, that is operations. So that would be district office, food services, technology, maintenance and operations. All fall into that place. Special education is by itself, again, 14.5% of our budget is dedicated towards special education. Compensatory, that's kind of our grant program. So Title I, also learning assistance program, fall under that category. Vocational education is CTE. making up about 7% of our expenditures. Other instructional programs, although that looks quite large at 6.1 million, a lot of that is where we keep our budget capacity. So generally when we finish out year end, there's kind of wide discrepancies between budget and actual, depending on how much of our budget capacity we actually use. The remainder in there would also include billables for fees and services. So for example, some of our smaller grants are in there. And then wrapping up, we have Skill Center at 1.6%. And then we have other financing uses of $500,000. That is the transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund, and that's where it's reflected. Any questions on revenues or expenditures?
Do we have any capital gains money coming our way?
Capital
The
gain?
capital gains tax, like the 900 million?
No,
Okay.
yeah.
So because the revenues are broken down a little differently than the actual expenses, can you just summarize where we lose, where we're going negative in expenditures versus revenues? Is it a particular program? Is it?
Largely, you would see it more on the basic. So regular instruction, that's where basic education is. That's where most of our staffing, our teaching staff is located in regular instruction. But that would also be funded out of the state general purpose account, which is again driven by enrollment.
I guess that's what's hard, I think, maybe to view and to kind of figure out which of these expenditures is causing us to go negative. Because if I look at regular instruction, we're spending on just that item less than what we're bringing in from the state for general purpose. So obviously there's other, the way it's split out. Do you see the question I'm
Yeah.
trying to get at it? So where are the major sources of not having enough revenue versus expense?
Yeah, and it would have to be, and I can provide it to the board, it's just a real breakdown by program to see. You just have to drill down further. I mean, if we want to really look at it, I mean, just off the top of my head, it's like special education. Even though it's not here, because special education is falling under state special purpose for revenue purposes. And here it's its own category for expenditures. If we drill down on that, we can see that for our budget for special education, it's above and beyond the state allocation. And we do use funding from other sources. We would draw from the state general purpose to cover whatever is in excess of what we receive from the state specifically for special education. But I can provide the board with a more specific breakdown of the areas.
That would be helpful, because I
Yeah.
realize there are some programs that we can do nothing about, and we have to provide the special ed to the degree it needs to be
exactly.
provided. But if there are other programs we offer that we don't necessarily have to offer if they're not panning out revenue expense wise, I suspect it's no, but just taking a look at, are we being as judicious as possible with our finances?
And so, for example, like vocational education, which would be CTE, and our skills center, if we did a breakdown of program, if we really drilled down to see how things are allocated, they would not exceed their revenue sources. So they're 100%, we would call them fully funded. But yes, I can provide more detail. Yeah. Oh, and here's appropriations. Again, a different viewpoint of looking at how our expenditures are broken out by salaries, benefits, and MSOC. So again, we can see here a breakout of certificated salaries. So essentially our teaching staff, about 41%, classified as 17%. Employee benefits consists of both classified and certificated. That makes up about 22% of our budget. So overall, that's about 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits, and 20% would be MSOC. So that's contracts, supplies. The transfer out, again, the transfer from the general fund to capital projects. If we remove the capacity of that 6.3 million and we looked at these numbers differently, this would, because we put all of our budget capacity either in supplies or our purchase services. So those do appear larger than we may actually spend. And so if we took out our $6.3 million in capacity from those two line items, then salaries and benefits goes up to about 84% and MSOC is about 16%, which is where we kind of like to be. We try to aim for that kind of 85%, the 15%, but the extra capacity does kind of throw off those initial numbers. So here's a breakout of the budget and forecasting. So based on our projected revenues and expenditures, we have the transfer out of $500,000. That will look to be a $4.6 million deficit for 24-25. Based on all those assumptions and the methodology, we kind of went through with declining enrollment, the IPD, and where we're going to sit for budget, at least budget-wise. And so based on that, we're looking at, and then we have our minimum fund balance of 5% of total expenditures. And then that puts our unassigned balance just under $1 million if this was actually, if we came to year end, and that would be our finishing line based on the budget. And then we go beyond that, 25-26. On the revenue side, we're going from 129.1 to 134.8. So again, that's assuming we're going to pass an EP&O levy based on certain levy rates and collection cap and enrollment lids, which would provide a much needed boost to our revenues despite the continuing declining enrollment. And so we could see a positive change in our fund balance. But then when we get down to 27-28, it starts to turn negative again. And what that is looking at is, again, we're kind of using this forecasting tool for our levy collection, and really when the enrollment lid, kind of inflation on the expenditure side catches up. So between inflation and enrollment decline, our levy kind of collection rate would be limited. So it kind of is closing the gap on the revenues. And so it looks like we're starting to look back like we would be going back and using our fund balance at that time. Again, these are all projections, but we're kind of looking ahead and just kind of being aware that inflation, declining enrollment, and levy collection lids are something finance is paying attention to when we're looking ahead. MSOC disclosure. So this is required by state law just to demonstrate that the budgeted state MSOC funding that we are receiving from the state for 24-25 will be allocated. So this MSOC funding only reflects the funding for basic education. So that's just what the disclosure is looking for. So it's not including other things like grants or CTE. So it's focused solely on basic education and district-wide support allocation we receive from the state for material supplies and operating costs. And then based on our budget, we have allocated 11.8. So since we're exceeding that amount, we are demonstrating to the state that we have fully allocated MSOC monies for their allocated purpose. Fund balance. So again,
Can I ask a quick question about the MSOC one? I hadn't thought about that before. When you talk about the capacitation, is that in the 11.8 million MSOC?
no, budget capacity is excluded.
Okay.
Yep, great question. Understanding fund balance. So again, fund balance is the district's reserves or savings account, and not all fund balance reserves are available to use at any time. So we have assigned, committed, and restricted funds. And then again, we have our unassigned funds, which may be used for any purpose. And the board has designated that 5% of budgeted expenditures of the as a minimum fund balance, which comes out of our unassigned funds. And the minimum fund balance is there to ensure that we have sufficient funding to maintain district operations. So this is our estimated beginning fund balance. Again, we're looking of a total beginning fund balance of about almost 15 million. I do want to draw attention. A lot of these numbers stay consistent from year to year. Again, we have the unassigned minimum fund balance, and then we would have available unassigned balance of 2.4. Again, just drawing attention to the committed fund purpose line of 3.3 million. So this would include just the $2.9 million of offsetting budget reductions and the $500,000 for capital project maintenance and emergencies. This will all be part of the board adoption resolution on August 27th, just for the board authorizing that. And so last year we did do the resolution for the 2.5, but just kind of for kind of simple and simplicity's sake, we're just going to allocate the full amount again this year. And then once the year end closes out in the fall, we can see how much of that 2.9 we used in the previous year. And then once we see that, we will adjust that number accordingly based on what was used for 23-24, and then reduce that amount for 24-25 later in the year. And then our estimated ending fund balance, we would finish at 10.3 million. And it assumes that we would use all of the 2.9 million to offset budget reductions, and also assumes that we're using $500,000 in capital projects funding, or for capital projects purposes. And again, if we don't use that $500,000 in full, that reverts back to the general fund and would increase this fund balance. But again, staying consistent with the 5% on the unassigned minimum fund balance, and then just looking at the unassigned balance by itself of under $1 million. So getting there, getting low. But during the school year, we hope to maximize and strengthen these reserves. So we do beat this budget. We do want to come out better than this, but this is what we're operating based on the current projections. Any questions on fund balance?
I do. Again, actually, you have to project with really major uncertainties, which you've highlighted.
Yes.
What gets voted on, what gets legislated, what the enrollment is, which we won't know about until October. And the bit that I wanted to highlight and make sure I'm tracking is the just under 15 million starting balance is the same as you projected in June. In June, at the end of April, which is the last financial amount for this year, we got through August 31, we still don't know what the results are. You were, I think, at 18.6 or so. 1.5 million is being voted to be transferred to capital, which would take that to 17.1. So you do have a little bit of uncertainty, and you won't get a readout till October between 17.1 at April and the 15 approximately there.
Yeah.
And so, I realize this can go either way. And then when you talked about possibly being able to not use the full 2.9 that was carried forward last year, if we didn't use all of that 2.1 in the final months of the year, then that would be where some additional funds would come from if we were fortunate.
Yeah, I mean, we're just looking at it. I mean, if we looked at the current fund balance right now, since we closed out, I mean, the most up-to-date numbers would be as of June, our general fund balance has gone down to 12.5. So, and we do expect, the expectation is that that's going to increase for July and August, because April and October would be our largest revenue year months for each school year, followed by July and August, when a lot of grant revenue comes in. So no, we don't know. It's just going to depend when things close out in October.
So the uncertainty's there, but I'm dealing with a high number from an earlier month. Okay.
Yes, correct.
Just quick clarification, because in slides previous, you showed the $500,000 coming from the general fund to the capital projects, but then it's not reflected in this general fund balance.
So if we're starting at the beginning of the year, we're saying it's part of that 3.3 million, so the committed to other purposes.
Oh, okay.
That's where we're saying we're setting aside $500,000 of the general fund for capital project fund purposes.
Okay.
And then assuming we would spend that by the end of the year, it would clear out entirely. Budget timeline. So again, we had the two budget presentations on the 4th and the 25th of June. It was submitted to the ESD on time by July 10th. We have received their feedback and incorporated it into tonight's presentation and the final budget. So again, August 27th will be the budget adoption at the regular meeting. And then it just needs to be, after we receive that adoption from the board, we will submit to OSPI by the end of the month. Any other questions? Yeah. Thank you.
Just want to give a huge shout out to Sean and the finance team for this incredible work. We all know it's a lengthy process, and our approach to the budget is the forecasting model that Sean has developed. And I think that it has, it's helped us in a variety of ways, and it will help us for years to come. The budget is a living process, and it's something that it changes and it moves. Martin, to your point earlier, and it's a big topic for the school district. So Sean, we appreciate all your work and your finance team. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the board? If not, then the 2024-25 budget hearing is now open for public comment. If there's anyone who has not submitted a public comment form, please do so. We will open the hearing at 6:46. Any comments? We don't have anyone online. Okay. Well, being that there is no comment, unless Sean or Corey want anything to say, any final piece, I will close the budget hearing at 6:46. All right, thank you. All right, moving on then to the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda were sent to the board and posted online last week. The board has had an opportunity to review materials and ask some of my questions a little bit late. The superintendent, any questions on any item on the agenda? Sorry for that. This week's consent agenda includes the minutes from the June 25th, 2024 regular meeting minutes, vouchers and payroll, personnel reports, contracts, and the 2024-25 athletic rental fees. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Seconded.
Moved by Maria, seconded by Tucker. Any other comments or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. We will now move on to citizen comment. If any member of the public would like to make a citizen comment, please sign up online 15 minutes prior to the meeting or in person. Paper forms are available at the entrance to the meeting room and can be completed and given to Board Secretary Kim White. Unless translation is required, each comment is limited to 3 minutes, and Ms. White will keep a timer to notify you if your time expires. Individuals who need translation service will be given 4 minutes to make a public comment, plus the time needed for interpretation. Please be aware the board is not obligated to respond to questions or challenges made during public comment, and the board's silence will not signal agreement or endorsement with the speaker's remarks. Is there anyone signed up for public comment? Okay. Moving on then, we are to special presentations. I think first up is the softball complex update.
Yes, and we have Rob and John here from Turner and Townsend Hury. John, are you joining, or are you you're here for support? I love it. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Yes. Rob,
He's still in training.
yeah, he's still in training. I love it.
We have to build him up a little more, but no, next time we'll let him
Yes.
present.
Excellent. And we've got a slide presentation, and it's going to be the right slide presentation, and it's going to be amazing. So Rob is here to talk us through that. And Rob, thanks for being here. John, thank you as well. We appreciate you both.
Thanks for the kind words, Corey. Good evening, board. Quick update on where we're sitting, kind of where we're evolving throughout, moving through this summer. We've had several challenges and some design hurdles and all the things that come with a project like this. And I can get into depth a little more with that. So here's kind of where we're started, which everyone knows and was our sense of how it was being built, or we want it to look like this when it's done. And here we're at the current moment of today. You can see both dugouts. You can see the press box. I hope you can see that. And then we're getting The field's is waiting for its top layer before we start installing the turf. So far we've completed all the masonry work for the locker rooms and the dugouts, and our subgrade's complete. Getting ready to install the big backstop posts that are like 30 feet high. That's going to control all the netting. We had some structural issues with that with the city, but we've worked through all those things. I've got to know everybody down at the city, and I think we're on a first name basis too. To say, I think we're going to lunch soon. Some interior framings being installed within the locker rooms, which you can finally see what they're going to look like. And again, the turf is arriving next week to be installed, start the installation. Here's another look at, as you can see, the inside of one of the locker rooms. So you can see it's nice and high and quite big, and it's not going to be kind of, you won't feel panicked in there, or it's big enough to be comfortable. And that's the outside of the press box. And then that is the outside look for the locker rooms and the bathroom. It's kind of unique building architecturally for what we're doing. It's gonna be pretty nice when it's done. So schedule update, we're hope by the end of this week to have the interior framing done. Our light poles from Musco has been delivered. So they're gonna start putting those up next week. We have a lot of work on the parking lots and the hardscapes around the building, which should go pretty quick. I'm hoping. Whoops. Well, I went the wrong way. That's good. That's a quick finger. Dang. Who knew? Okay. As I stated earlier, the turf is going to be should be completed by the end of the month, which is going to give, hopefully, my plan is to have this so the softball team can actually practice on it. We're still going to be doing some work around the vicinity, but our goal is to, after Labor Day, for it to be they can get on and practice. We have some testing to do, but we're hoping that's done early. We have mechanicals going in all the conditioning spaces, the air conditionings and heaters in the locker room and the bathrooms. And we hope to have, there's a certain particular kind of programming that we have to do the lights. So we hope to have all those lights up and running and programmed, teaching everybody who's going to be involved with the lights. It's one that you can go on your phone and they can turn them on at any time by the end of the month as well. Here's kind of a look. There's the lights there in the box. It says Musco. And here's kind of the look of this scoreboard that's going to be coming in. It's kind of fun to see it. This is the backstop padding and the windscreens. We've had some different iterations, and this is what we settled on. And so we're good to go now. We're hoping to get those on time, but it may be a bit of a delay on these, not to stop any kind of practice or any kind of games. So looking at the end of the month, we have inspections with the city. PUD's got to change over the power. John and I and the architects will start a pre-punch at the end of the month. Substantial completion and handover. We're targeting the 30th. I think it may be after that, after Labor Day. And then we'll do our final punch list the week after Labor Day. And then we have scheduled for all the IT systems to be installed early September. We're looking pretty good. It's been a lot of fun doing it, a lot of heartache. But it's just the way construction is. I guess that's why I stay in it. Any questions? I know Maria does have one.
I won't give you that much of a hard time that it won't be fully completed by the end of August. But I mean, I'm reassured that it won't impede what needs to happen after the August completion target, in the original target goal, won't impede the ladies from going and using it.
Yeah, there'll be some training and stuff and what to use and how to use it and when, so and it'll keep evolving as we move into the toward the end of September too. It's almost like any type of thing that we have in our contracts, we have 60 to 90 days for punch lists and closeout. So there's still going to be some work going on, even though they can utilize the field and, hopefully the 100% capacity. But still that's a moving target too. Which is good. I mean, they'll be able to practice on it, kind of get a feel for it and get used to it. And there'll be kinks worked out with the lighting systems and electrical. Parking's always going to be an issue. But in the next 2 weeks, it's going to come a long way too.
I'll think of something else.
Yes.
Quick question, some of these, the cost overruns, I know we budgeted for contingencies. Are we within the contingencies or are we like outside of?
Well, one of the
contingencies?
big issues was when we first started, I'm sure you were informed, but we found a city water main that ran underneath there that the city didn't even know about. So there was no, that's what we call unforeseen condition. And it was quite a bit of work to get there and to also meet the city's requirements. There's a certain requirement that the city has over and above what we would do typically on this site. And actually that fed a bunch of houses across the street. So when we turned it off to get it back together, they lost water for a little bit, but we informed them. So it wasn't a bad thing, but I didn't know that. I don't think the city did either, that there was people probably getting free water for all these years.
You're not a popular guy.
Well, it comes with the territory. But anyway, it's been a great project and we still have a long way to go, and it'll continue to move positively. And we're going to hopefully keep any of the cost overruns, which is contingency, I think has been used up or close to it. We don't anticipate anything moving forward. I don't forecast anything, not as good as Sean, but I don't see any big issues coming up that I've after diving into it more than I ever have. I don't see anything coming down the pipe. So I think we're in pretty good shape. I think it's a great investment for your community too. It's going to be great. And with my assistant, John, he's done a great job with everybody. And we've got to know a lot of the locals in the town that are working. A lot of local contractors have done a lot of the work and they've been great to work with. Right, John? Yeah. We have a great electrical company we like here. All right. Thank you for your time. If there's anything else, you guys could always email me, reach out to me or get me through Corey anytime. And you guys want to come by the site, let me know. I'll walk you through it.
Do we have a projected ribbon cutting date?
We don't have one completely solidified. Diana will be working with Rob and the Hallmay group to figure out when exactly to do that. We'd love to have it coincide with something around softball, either practice or a game or something that we can do too. So that'll be coming very soon.
Okay.
Because it'll be very important for us to showcase this. And as I was sharing with both Rob and John earlier, it is pretty special. I'd love to have any one of you come out and just be out there. It's pretty special just to be there between all of the varsity fields. It feels really good and something that we can all be proud of. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Safe travels, gentlemen. You are welcome to stick around for the strategic plan highlights conversation, or you can get on the road, whatever works for you. Understandably so. Excellent. I'm going to grab that. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. All right. Thank you. Okay, we are going to jump into 2024-25 strategic plan update, and we're throwing some challenges in here to look at that. All right, Liz is doing it. So we're working with a little bit of a new system here. So what tonight's presentation is really some highlights of the work behind the strategic plan and the work of the strategic plan over the last couple of years. And this is going to be the first of many presentations that will come to the board, highlighting the strategic plan and the work itself. So tonight is about highlights. And so we're going to talk about things that we have worked on and things that we have accomplished. And then in the coming sessions, we'll talk about the data collection, where we are at the end of the second year as we move into the third year, and then what our plans are for the future as well. So this is part one of a variety of information that you'll receive moving forward. So I'm excited about that. Let's see if I can make this dream happen here. There we go. And we start off with our promise to the students to build that foundation of diversity, equity, and inclusion from which each student emerges future ready. And then from there, we move on to our values as we start off the strategic plan. And one of those values is excellence in learning. And so we have a couple of highlights that we want to share here about our excellence in learning. So the PLC is a huge focus of ours, and it was a 3-year journey that we were on together as a district and the PLC at work community. We focus on our collaboration on the 4 questions here, the 4 PLC questions. What do we want students to know and be able to do? How will we know if they learned it? And how will we respond when some of the students do not learn it? And then how will we extend that learning for students who are already proficient? Really, the basis of our collaboration time and our teacher collective efficacy revolve around these 4 questions and how we utilize that time in Monday morning collaboration. On the other side, talking about our guaranteed and viable curriculum that we have built also over the last 3 years is hugely important. Those classroom-based assessments, that data collection, grade level content and curriculum, and then the essential strategies for all students. So we know those best practices that are great for all students, but they're essential for our multilingual learners. The other value that we're going to highlight tonight is equity. And in this process, we want to highlight the monthly meetings that we have with our leadership team about growing our learning on the promise statement that I just shared with you. How are we as leaders learning and growing and understanding how we build that foundation of diversity, equity, and inclusion for each student? One of the things that we've done in the 23-24 school year is we outlined our goals for this particular year, which highlight our continued professional growth and our learning, as well as a new form of collaboration that we'll be utilizing, that we'll be using a problem of practice methodology that we're working on solidifying within our system, and we'll continue to work on that. And then how do we really honor and understand and realize the equity work that happens on a daily basis in the things that we do pay attention to and on the things that we may not be paying attention to that we need to. And then finally, how are we leading this work in the future? How are we taking what we've learned and that professional development and bringing it back to our schools and our buildings and helping our staff learn and grow as well? We also have some automatic placement of students in advanced classes for math and English based on meeting specific criteria on the Smarter Balance assessment. And this will pop up a couple times. There'll be a few things that are a little bit on repeat as we get to the big 6 data points and the equity program review. So you'll hear that a few times. And then also how we have restructured over the past 2 years our systems of intervention for students that need additional time and support, and really working that. We still have work to do in this area as we are building interventions in math for students as well. So you'll see a little bit on that as we get to our big 6 data points. So what have we accomplished? And this moves into our priorities here. And the first priority that we're going to focus on is our thriving environment. And so that thriving environment, as you remember, is a welcoming space where all individuals flourish, they're seen, valued, they feel safe, and they know that they belong. So in this area, we have done a variety of things that are listed here. We've had safety care training, an increase in safety care training for our staff. We began that journey as a lot of our special education staff had that training and many of our paras, but we're realizing that more of our staff needed that particular and intentional training. And so we've gotten more involved there. As our BCBAs have fluctuated, the number of BCBAs that we've had, that training becomes a little bit more difficult, but we're still committed to that. We had some social emotional team training last year. and also some work in the restorative justice. We still need to do some more work in our restorative justice training, and we're looking to find some quality professional development that we could bring in or that we can find that is reasonable and close for us to do that work. And then, as you all know, we highlighted here the Stronger Connections Grant, which has helped in a variety of ways. It actually funded the social emotional training and the restorative justice work that we've done, as well as that bottom tier, our SSS positions, our student services specialist positions. It has funded that last year and then for this year and the next year as well. So we can continue to have those amazing individuals working with our students. Okay, another accomplishment here is our priorities. So we have a partnership priority. This is where this is all about relationships. So relationships between students, staff, families, schools, and our community that enhance student well-being and success. What we've highlighted here under this priority is our partnerships with different agencies and companies in the area. We have CVCH, we have SABE, we have the North Central Washington Tech Alliance, our interagency meetings with some of you, which some of you have attended right here in our main boardroom, where all of the agencies locally come and learn exactly what is happening in our valley that can help support students. And then we have other additional partnerships that we have here. So the Chelan County PUD, we have Together for Youth, we have Sage Hills Church, GISA Credit Union, and many more. So this is just a highlight and an acknowledgement of those partnerships that we have in the community. Okay. We have our big 6 data points, as you all know well, and I'll go through each one of those individually and share those highlights with you. And then we'll move on to the equity program review, and I'll pause for some questions or comments that might come from the board. So number 1, experiencing high quality instruction. Students receive and participate in grade level or beyond standards, instructions, and assignments. And this is again where we highlight our Wenatchee, got away from myself. This is where we highlight those Wenatchee School District essential instructional strategies, those best practices that are great for all students, but essential for our multilingual learners. And then the district trainer model, the professional development model that we have come up with for the Wenatchee School District. As you remember, we had a coach model before, and through budget reduction process, we had to eliminate that. And we have our district trainer model, which I couldn't be more proud of and more happy with. The idea here is that as districts move into a budget reduction world, the fear is that you might plateau the work, or you may just not move forward as fast as you have been in the past. But our district trainer model has really leveraged 4 amazing people in our district under the guidance of Heidi Busk and Amber Burks to not allow the Wenatchee School District to plateau in the midst of budget reduction. So really proud of that work and the continuation of that work moving forward. And then, of course, increasing teacher collective efficacy as we work to build highly effective teams, and we work to build on those 4 PLC questions that we talked about a little bit earlier as well. Number 2 in our big 6 is belong and are connected. Students know they belong and they have healthy relationships with staff and peers. And so we know that one of the things that we do for our students is that annual culture and climate student survey for all of our students, which drives school improvement plans. And we know that our principals are looking at certain pieces of this to understand and make sure that their students do feel seen, valued, heard, and that they're safe. We're also doing some school culture work with regard to positive behavioral interventions and supports, and of course, our social emotional learning, all coming from the grant dollars that we were able to receive from that Stronger Connections grant. And then again, highlighting the partnerships. Here we have a couple of partners that weren't mentioned previously with our Daybreak telehealth services, Children's Home Society, whose name has changed to Akin, and I'm still trying to get used to that. So I'm using them both. And then CVCH, of course, for our school-based mental health services as well. So those are the highlights there for number 2. Number 3, reading on grade level. We have our structured literacy routines. Students will read on grade level by third grade and beyond, and will continue to grow their skills, knowledge, and abilities throughout their education in the Wenatchee School District. We highlight here a structured literacy routine, common reading foundational skills assessment, which happens 3 times a year. Our reading intervention based on skill and need that we've been growing over the past 2 years. And then finally, our common formative assessments. Number 4, ready for algebra. Students will be on grade level or beyond by 8th grade in algebra, specifically number and operations and algebraic thinking. And you can see here that we have a variety of things that we're doing, 7 in fact here. Some of them are repeats, but you can see that in the K-5 arena, we have our math problem solving routines and number talk, our fact fluency, our mathematical mindset, and then the fact that we are building intervention strategies around mathematics in 3 of our elementary schools. And from what I understand, we'll have more this year that are finding ways to utilize their staff to build stronger interventions in math. And then number 5 is our on track for graduation. Students are on track to graduate by the end of their 9th grade year and beyond. And these are some of the items that we're excited about in this area. Targeting that 9th grade success. We know that research tells us that 9th grade is a pivotal year. That transition tells a lot about a student's academic and social emotional trajectory. We are working with our counseling teams and the high school and beyond plan to create a smoother middle to high school transition. Also leveraging college in the classroom. And then 4, AVID is still alive, well, and strong, and we are proud of that work as they continue to graduate a large number of students. And then we highlight our migrant graduation specialists as well, and the work that they do to help guide our students through to the end. And then you'll remember back from our workshop in April that Jake Buchholz was here, and he really dove deeper into Big 6 data point 6 and talking about CTE. But this one is involved in real world relevant learning. Students are engaged in a continuum of learning experiences that create awareness, exploration, preparation, and work experiences to be future ready. So we'll just bust through these. We have the Data Center Technician Pathway Grant. We have our program pathways that are clearly outlined, leading to post-secondary credentials and family wage employment. All 6 CTE program areas that are present in our secondary schools. 23 dual credit courses aligned and articulated. And then that 26% growth in individual students who are experiencing CTE experiences in the 23-24 school year. And Jake is committed to, as we are, for seeing that just continue to grow. And that is a great time to just pause for a minute and see if there are any comments, concerns, or questions that I can address tonight or bring back at a later date. That's a great question, Miranda. We are looking at this point at finding some professional development that we can leverage, but we have not reached out to other school districts that are doing it well. At least I have not been involved in that work. That might be something I can check in with Mike Lane under Student Services, but that's a great idea because there is good work that's happening out there and we need to know where the right steps are. Mm-hmm.
Creative resources, workshops.
Excellent. Thank you. Other thoughts or comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
In regards to the equity, under our values, the auto placement in advanced math and English classes.
Yes.
Based on SBA data. SBA?
SBA, SBA, yeah.
Okay.
Potatoes, tomatoes.
Is there, based on the data that we get from OSPI, there's a clear gap in the performance of our marginalized students and the counter white. So are we seeing the same trend with these placements where there's a disproportionate number of our marginalized students versus our white students, non-marginalized?
Well, the great thing about the placement is that's one way that students are able to access those courses as well. They can also opt into them. So it's not the only way that students are accessing those courses, but it is one clear path.
I guess my concern is that if we are using, I mean, they can opt in, but if we're using placement data, I'm afraid that that gap is going to continue to widen because our numbers show us that
Right.
who's meeting the standards versus who's not.
Gotcha.
My other question, and you might go into this further, but looking into what have we have accomplished under our priorities of thriving environment. If we recall the survey from while working on the strategic plan early on the student surveys, many of our students didn't feel safe or felt like they belonged. And so, which prompted the equity audit.
Mhm.
And what we have accomplished, I see trainings, mainly trainings, but I don't see any DEIB training in this for our staff to be able to create a school/classroom environment, looking deep into our biases, unconscious biases, because that was one of the themes that came up when students didn't feel like they belonged, they didn't feel safe. So what is the district doing to address those concerns that go way back to the beginning from the surveys? You know, the cultural acceptance, again, the biases.
Yep.
I know we do have some state requirements. So has something been done? Is there plans on?
Yeah, if you go back to the equity slide from our values, right there, the bullet point that says the monthly meetings with the leadership team. So we are working with the leadership team to grow that. And then if you look down to leading the work, this year they'll actually be engaging with their staff on bias training and moving into equity and what that means for their staff.
I'm hoping to see something bigger than that. We have restorative justice training. We have social emotional training. We ourselves, even myself as a person of color, I can't teach Miranda. I can't teach you about diversity, equity, and belonging because that's not my expert area.
Right.
And so it's great that the leadership is having these conversations and they're training, but unless we're having a neutral party come and provide that training, I mean, to me, it's not sufficient.
Okay.
Again, we have to look at the demographics of our district and making sure, I mean, it's same thing with the social emotional approach, right? We have trainers, we have, this is something we've been doing years and years. And so our teachers are trained to identify, we have a process. But I feel like we haven't even touched the surface in regards to making sure that all of our students feel safe, they feel belong, like they have a sense of belonging. And you know, I'm hoping that I mean, this is something that we've been talking about since Paul Gordon was here. We talked about having obviously this is off the table with budget constraints and whatnot, but having a DEI coordinator, director, whatever it was. And so I want us to revisit that because I think our students will, I mean, if we as a district, as a leadership team, as a board are not doing anything that is kind of putting it out there, I don't think, I mean, some administrators, some leadership members might be more successful at it, but again, unless it's coming from the top down, I don't think, you know, again, going back to policies, we have policies, but doesn't mean everybody's implementing
Right.
these policies.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So you would like to see something bigger than what we have planned. So we'll get together and work on that. Sounds great. Other
right.
thoughts or comments? Yeah.
I kind of going back to the thriving environment as well. I see we've partnered with a lot of healthcare, emotional care, those kinds of organizations.
Mhm.
What are we doing strategically district-wide to help kids find activities and programs that they can connect with? In addition to, it's great we have all these support services, but what are we doing to help, maybe students find the math program that they may excel at and may then feel connected to the school and give back and stay engaged through high school? Or what are we doing on that level? Because it feels like there's a disconnect. We've got a lot of services. We're doing a lot of cultural awareness work, but we're not steering kids or helping them really engage with programs and services beyond. They may help them through their 12 years of school.
Okay, like besides, like, are you thinking extracurricular?
Just
or-
like math, extracurricular, like anything that can help them, because I envision that as well as part of the feeling connected and
Mhm.
belonging and
Absolutely.
wanting to go to school and having this, helping build a school identity that others want to be a part of. I think it helps with our enrollment. I think it helps with the student experience. And so we've got a lot of these social emotional support services that we're looking into, but I don't hear as much. Are we training staff to help guide students to areas of interest or other things to help kind of expand their horizons and improve their experience in schools?
Okay.
Can I just bounce off of that? I'm not sure it's necessarily within the private environment, but I could see that as a partnership, right? The partnerships that
Sure.
the school district may have with the YW, what is it these days? YMCA,
YMCA, yes. Mhm.
I really like Peach Jar, but I know, email is a kind of a hit or miss,
Yeah.
especially with, saying off what Julie's saying, we have an opportunity for continued partnerships or growing, those partnerships to be able to provide, the information, give resources
Yep.
to support.
And maybe that kind of goes with the belong and are connected, sort of responding to the culture and feedback survey,
Mhm.
or what are we doing to help students feel connected to further their interests so that they do stay engaged?
Absolutely. And I think we can provide some of those as well. Like we could take what's happening at elementary school, what's happening at middle school. Like there are things that are happening. They're not part of this presentation, but I can bring those back for sure. Absolutely. I think that's.
Can
cool.
I enter that one a little bit? What's the name of the event you have at the end of the year at the high school when all of the extracurricular activities, career opportunities,
Oh,
and it's designed to introduced eighth graders into everything they
is
can
that
do.
engage?
Engage, that's right.
Thank you, because there's.
So,
Ignite.
I'm wondering,
Yes.
it's kind of a question for Julie.
Yeah.
Because what I see that I think is very encouraging is it's not just in CTE and shadowing and jobs. It's the change in which we are going into the middle schools. It's really talking about pathway to graduation, which is linked to pathway to having a meaningful career. And I think that, to me, that kind of addresses, where is there an opportunity? Because I think that's now maybe in about its third or fourth year of being significantly more aggressive. If you go to an elementary school, you'll see the high school graduates coming in their purple robes around the fifth graders. All of those driving deeper down. You could go to Orchard and they have their eighth graders write little essays about what can I get into to do as an activity or everything in the high school. So I feel that which you didn't mention, but I do want to say that I think there's a whole front in which we do this and we can leverage it and work on it really well.
Absolutely. And highlight it. We can add it to our highlights. Yeah, definitely. Other thoughts? Okay, awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, the next part of our slide presentation jumps into the equity program review, Maria, which you mentioned earlier. And one of the values of this is to remind ourselves what were the 5 areas of the equity program review that the district went through in 2021. And then we have a few highlights that have been part of the work in conjunction with the strategic plan as well. So just to highlight that. Let's see here. So the first one is access to learning opportunities. To what extent do students in the Wenatchee School District have equitable access to grade level learning opportunities? And again, we have the first part is the automatic placement in advanced math and English class, which Maria has mentioned as well. That could also be a gap extender. And we want to make sure that we address that piece. And then the idea that our inclusive practices, training and support in all of our schools district-wide. The development of a newcomer process. And then, of course, the most important part of that is the replication of that across all of our schools. And how are we addressing our newcomers and helping them find success? And then increased professional development and support for our multilingual learners. Again, with that essential strategies work that our learning and teaching team has been working on and will continue to work on this year. The second area of the equity program review is instructional practices and policies. How do students and families experience the district's instructional policies and teaching practices? Oops, went a little fast there. So increasing CTE offerings and real-world relevant instruction is one of those. Access to rigorous curriculum and challenging instruction through college in the high school courses. And then again, on repeat, the Wenatchee School District essential strategies for all students. The third area of our equity program review is the curriculum, materials, resources, and policies. To what degree is there fidelity to and accountability for implementing cultural and linguistically responsive curricula? And here we have again highlighted our increased support for improving access to curriculum for our multilingual learners. And then those two guiding questions that that Heidi shared last year at the beginning of the school year when we talked about our district trainers. How can we collectively take ownership for accelerating the language development and current content outcomes for our multilingual learners? What high leverage strategies can we use to engage 100% of our students in rigorous academic learning? And then for the elementary, we have slated the integrated and designated ELD reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And then in secondary, we have our integrated ELD reading, writing, speaking, and listening as well. Number 5 is discipline practices, procedures, and policies. And the highlighted areas here, we have specific and intentional student services, team meetings at the elementary and secondary level. We've also been working with the state guidance to help students stay enrolled. And at one point, there was a very hard and fast rule that if a student missed 20 consecutive days of school, they had to be withdrawn. The state has come to actually COVID and the pandemic helped that, but the state has become much more flexible, and so have we in working through with families that might need additional time to communicate with the school and are going through some challenges, and we don't always have to automatically withdraw those students at that time. We can work with them and have a little bit of flexibility. We also have multi-tiered systems of support. We'll be kicking off the school year with a needs analysis to determine any additional areas that need to have realignment with regard to our positive behavioral interventions and supports, our SEL, and our behavioral interventions. And then finally, we have our hiring and recruitment practices and policies, working on policies and procedures to help us conduct employee exit surveys. So we understand exactly why employees are leaving our system and what we can do to remedy that if possible. Posting jobs outside of the school district and looking at leveraging, bringing in creative talent when we have those jobs available. And then growing our own talent, students and staff to grow into paras and teachers. And we'll see more of that this year as we continue to partner with Eastern Washington University, and they continue to bring programs and grant funding to our school district to help paras become teachers and help teachers move through and gain their master's degree and more. So we're excited about that. And then what's next is sharing the strategic plan data and gearing up for the third year. So those are things to come. When I look at what we have here at this point today is the highlighting the accomplishments. So this is the presentation highlights just some of the work in the specific areas of the strategic plan and the equity program review. And then we'll be bringing in some data collection as we look at how did our metrics work after the end of the second year of our strategic plan. And then share that data with our stakeholders through school board meetings. And then finally discuss the plans and the outcomes of what this year has to offer for the school district with regard to the strategic plan and keeping that topic front and center as we move forward. Excellent. So have time for other comments, questions or concerns, and from the board, if you have any. Thank you for your time this evening. Yeah.
For our district, how the opportunity for dual language.
Mhm.
You know, with that or what that would look like to get that opportunity for our students or.
Like a growing an opportunity of that outside of Lewis and Clark? Well, I think our immediate plans are to continue the work at Lewis and Clark right now through the dual language grant and to continue to build a program that we feel is proficient, moving students forward in that area and then look to grow afterward.
For that students.
Oh.
Is there sort of basis or a structure for that? You're like, I know it's through K through 5, is it something that I know Fort Hills has had at middle school and there's a set up at high school level?
We need to be working on aligning our middle school piece right now. And so Foothills is working on that as they're also working through their new schedule and those programs. So that is still work in progress for us. But dual language is an opportunity for our district right now, and students can choice into dual language if they decide to. But yeah, we do have a dual language team, and we do have the dual language grant that is helping drive some of that work. And this year, as far as the demographic. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Ours is more of a 50-50 model. Thank you. Other thoughts?
I want.
Okay.
Okay, so I hope my colleague on the board kind of join me in asking these challenging questions, because I'm looking at this, we've had this since 2021. And going through these slides, you know, I want to remind that equity is not just about language access, English language development. It goes beyond language, race. And so given that we do have our student population is predominantly Latino, I get how we are kind of guiding this through language, English language development. But just looking at the, say, for example, the instructional practices and policies, these are this is something, these 3 bullet points that are shown here are stuff that we're already providing district-wide. Again, the equity review or the audit, let's call it what it was, highlighted discrepancies of how we are leaving a percentage of students, our practices are leaving students behind. And so it's great that we have awesome CTE offerings, rigorous curriculums, our essential strategies for all students, but there's a gap. What in addition to these are we doing to address what we found based on, from the equity audit? I mean, again, and again, you know, curriculum and materials. What are we doing to show that the curriculums or the teachings that are the instruction practices are reflective of this of our student population at whole? When we're picking out curriculum, are we looking to make sure that in our K-12, in our K-6, K-5, K-8 level, is our curriculum reflective of our students is short stories, authors. I know, my experience with Wonders. Yes, and that was during Brian Flonis's time, I believe. But what have we done since to make sure that our students see themselves in the resources, in the material, in the policies?
Right.
Policies, a lot of our policies are written where subconsciously they're targeting a specific demographic. Are we, and it, maybe it's not policies, but it's procedures. I'm going to use the dress code, for example, and that's just one of many, right? Whether we like it or not. The discipline procedure policies. I mean, I think that is what it is. The hiring and recruitment practices. I know we've had multiple conversations, Kelly and I. Again, these are our current practices. What, in addition to this, are we doing to recruit highly qualified, diverse employees? If you look at our teacher numbers, the diversity at the secondary level, they're not reflective of our student population, race, gender identity, you name it. But this doesn't tell me what we've changed to include, to change what we've been doing that hasn't worked.
Absolutely. We still have lots of work to do, Maria.
And I don't see the tip of the iceberg in this. And this is what's super frustrating to me. And I don't mean to throw anybody under the bus, but again, these are conversations we've been having since what got us to this audit, to this equity audit. And I just feel like we've been sitting on it. We haven't moved the needle, and not to, I know we haven't been sitting on it, but I just feel that we're highlighting stuff that we are already doing. That's part of the strategic plan. It's not moving the needle in regards to the equity gaps that we have.
Absolutely.
And I hope, again, I hope that I'd be more than happy to sit and have a conversation with anybody, my colleagues on the board, to better understand my perspective, especially as the demographics in our district change. We're going to have to rethink the way we do everything, because we need to make sure that we are serving all of our students, regardless of their the identity factors.
I agree. And not that it answers your questions, but I'm very excited to share with you and the board the problem of practice methodology that we're putting together with the equity lens. I think it'll be work that you'll be proud of. I think all 5 of you will be proud of that work. And I think it will be something that will help our district actually tackle some of these tough conversations. It's not going to answer everything, and it's not going to probably get us to a point where the board would be, happy with immediately, but at least it's where we need to be when we are addressing these problems and practices, because there are blind spots that are preventing us from seeing what actually needs to take place.
And thank you for bringing up, and that's why I invite my colleagues, because we all have blind spots, right? And I, as the only person of color sitting up here, sorry, Miranda, not the only person of color, but as a Latina, a female, my lens is broad. And so it's frustrating to not be able to pinpoint and say, oh, this is, in the last 3 years, this is what we've accomplished. This is how we're closing the data, the gaps. Because can we pull data on these and say that we're actually moving the needle on it? I would like to see that. I think that's a challenge for us as a district. But I don't think we're there yet. And I don't know how much longer we're going to wait.
Right. I would agree. I think the data would be challenging for us to find and to share. But we do have, I think that's the work, right? That is the work that we need to be doing. And so that will be coming. Yeah.
I think it might be helpful to see some of these curriculums that we already have. I know they in themselves have moved some of their framework already. I've seen some of the things that my kids bring home from their worksheets and things, and I can see some more inclusive material in some of the work we have. Maybe more examples of that. How is that working? What do we need to do above and beyond that to move that needle?
Yeah.
I foresee our budget situation being a significant challenge in terms of changing our staffing demographic. If we are moving the same people around to avoid cutting folks and whatnot, we're not gonna materially change our demographic, as I understand it, until we can openly hire more folks. So those are, I see, are challenges, and what are we doing to address that?
I agree with the challenges too, but I think given the situation we currently have, give us the opportunity to think outside the box and what we can do with resources that we currently have with our students and our educators, and how we can best approach what is going to be best for them.
Like a opportunity.
This is not a conversation, and we're just starting this academic year. So we can't use these excuses as a budget. I mean, yes, we are under limitations, but we do have to start exploring and thinking outside the box, because again, we can't continue to wait. We just can't. Every year we can find a list of excuses, of reasons why we have to stall on this or not move on this, or we have to be creative.
And for clarification, I wasn't suggesting that's an excuse for the demographic, saying this is the reality, is that we may not achieve the demographic we want. So what are we doing with what we have to make the improvements that we need?
I appreciate that. Thank you. The thoughts? All right. I took copious notes, but Kim took better notes. And so we will be able to address those. And as we bring back more iterations of the strategic plan conversation and the equity program review, equity audit, then we will be able to share more of that information with you and highlight the areas. Obviously, we don't have what we need to satisfy completely, but we will share what we do have, and then the plans moving forward on how we address that work, because that's what we need to do. So we will not wait. Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you for the time this evening. We had a lot of we're building our stamina back. We're first meeting of the year. We've got a lot of presentations, and everyone has done a great job. And so I will just move into the superintendent's report, since that's what's next here. I do have a few things that I want to share. First and foremost, we're very excited about the new school year. We had administrators back last week. We were able to feel their excitement. And we bring back our non-year-round staff next Tuesday. And then following that, we have students. We are 2 weeks away. And so it is amazing. And so a couple of things to share. Can we say anything more about Mariachi? First place for Mariachi at the national conference in Albuquerque. That is super cool. What an incredible accomplishment from Mariachi director, teacher, coach Eddie Cortez, his amazing students, the parents, the families, the supporters of the program. It just feels like a truly defining moment in everyone's lives. Also, if you've had a chance to follow the FAQ Fridays, we've had a couple of we've had 5 of them. 4. No, 5. We've had 5 of them. So we had attendance, cell phones, summer school, athletics. The last one was on maintenance and operations. And then we're going to have the next one will be on traffic safety. And so we're going to bring in our SROs, and actually I'll be collaborating with Mayor Mike Poyer on one with the traffic unit as well. So I'm excited. You know that they are being seen by some folks when the mayor asked to jump on one. So we thank the city of Wenatchee for that. And then a shout out to our M&O team. And I know that you as board members know what our M&O team has done this summer, because I've shared some of that with you. But as Brian Brocky will attest to each one of you, it has been a summer to remember, or maybe to forget, with regard. Like HVAC issues, irrigation, and suppression sprinklers have been the vein of our M&O folks back as they've been working through this summer. We know that Orchard had some issues and is still currently having issues. We're just hoping that is mediated before our students come back. Be great if it was mediated before our staff comes back next week. Newberry had some issues, Mission View had some issues, and then we currently have 3 units down at the high school right now that are affecting CTE, world languages, and the library area. So we'll need to get hopping on that. So Sean, thank you for the forethought with the transferring of funds into the capital projects account. We'll be needing them. And then today I had a kind of what I felt like was a random meeting with the American Heart Association. But it ended up being super informative for me. I knew we did great work with their help, but I had no idea the magnitude. So the students of Wenatchee School District, serving others and saving lives through the Kids Heart Challenge. The American Heart Association works with 5 of our elementary schools. 405 students and families are engaged. 282 families learned hands-only CPR for children, and then warning signs of a stroke, which is great. And then these students and families in schools raised $30,000 to help save and improve lives through CPR training, quality hospital care, and research. And then the schools earned a collective $2,250 back into their PE departments. I was like, holy cow, I just didn't know the scope. And it's those little nuggets of information that just help us realize that we are able to make an impact in our community through the amazing students and staff that we have. So that's it for the superintendent's report. Thank you so much.
Is there any board communication? Start at that end? Yep.
I spent a very impressive part day, couple of hours in the migrant summer school at Mission View. And, my comment afterwards was enjoyable, interesting, useful for me to see the learning connection between science and language, which they do, their approach to mathematics, and also to learn how much I didn't know. And I was going to add, and I will add, kudos to the M&O, because shortly after that visit, they had to relocate and everybody scrambled. And I just really want to I also wanted to thank the leadership and staff at the migrant summer school, because it's fun to see them doing their work, and then pass the same congratulations on to M&O. And actually, I got this here. We talk about what we do and what we don't do. And I'm actually going to talk about the administration advance, and I'm going to address some of what we discussed 5 minutes ago in that. But, we are the public school district. We're the one that has open doors. We are comprehensive. You go through this and you see how many groups this district attempts to serve. It is awesome. This is a great publication. This is what you do in this district. This is what we try to give to our youth so that they can go, and I'll get off my soapbox, but this is a really good example of effort, I think. Anyway, the impression I enjoyed sitting in on the administrative leadership meeting, and the overall impression I had was this is how an enterprise should function. We're dealing with an awful lot of work that we need to do. The uptake percent on our efforts, if we're talking about equity, are still very, very low. The staff are dealing with massive uncertainty. And I'll just make, I think one comment, we talked a lot about they talked a lot about making students belong, but I think something that came out of getting input from outside the leadership group is how much the staff within the buildings also need to belong and be empowered. And we need to get out of this building and into all the other buildings and generate that same spirit. This gets back to, I'm using my management experience when I sit in on this kind of meeting. This was a good one. And I think the school district should be pleased about that. And planning is a big emphasis of what you do. You're not going to do anything unless you plan well. And then planning takes time to get traction. And then you have to have patience before you get statistics to show you made advances. And absolutely, we need to think outside the box, kick ourselves in the rear end, and do more than we're doing. But it's not, I've been on the board long enough now to know the different tone of how people were trying. I'm going to say trying, but I think we need to support and work really, really hard, because I think the efforts are there. We need to make them better. And something else that I wanted to say is I felt that there was an atmosphere. Corey, you wrote notes and you said, Kim's going to take better notes. We need to take this as a lesson, listen to people, listen to their ideas, listen to constructive criticism that comes from outside, and pay attention. And I did feel that there was a little bit of that sort of atmosphere that was healthy in the room that when I sat in there. I'm not sure whether I got it right, but I did have that positive feeling. So I really wanted to say that. It's kind of like you want to turn a ship around. You go back to 120 years and ships ran on coal. And the first thing people did is they shoveled coal in the stokers down in the engine room. took a while for that ship to turn around. We need to make the ship turn around faster. But we also need to recognize that it takes that groundwork, and let's try and give ourselves the energy to do it.
Really hard following Martin on that. I'm gonna stick with welcome back, everyone, and go from there.
I also want to make a comment on that guide.
Fair game. I had a second bite. Go.
No, no. No, I actually was looking for something for my son's school, and I came across a digital version of the guide. And so I went through it. I had all my questions answered and then some more. All the information is there. And so I immediately, communicated and said, you guys, this is really good work. I found all the information as a parent. And then the stuff we've discussed here on the board is also, in the guide. So yeah, it was great. And then that afternoon, it came in the mail. So yeah, the hard copy. So I was like, oh, it's even printed, even better. So yes, kudos to everybody that I know that's a big effort from different departments, throughout the district. So kudos. And then that's exactly, Martin, what I'm referring to. It's beautiful. It's Spanish English. There's I think in some areas it leads with the Spanish. And that's a great example of we can't just stop there. This is something that I was a broken record when COVID started. We need to do communication, and we're doing a fabulous giving that language access part. Now let's replicate that into different pockets of the district.
All I've got is good luck to our 2 Wenatchee area baseball teams in the World Series this week. So lots of kids from the 10Us and 13Us that are in our district. So good luck to them as they start their bracket plays. That's all I got. I guess I will adjourn.
You go ahead.